Ready for a bedtime revolution? Efficacent Extreme has got you covered. It has clear oil infused with the calming essence of lavender and is a refreshing, cooling sensation. It's like a bedtime story for your senses, bringing an end to the saga of sleepless nights. Turn your sleep struggles into sweet dreams and say farewell to tossing and turning with Efficacent Extreme, because good nights shouldn't be just a dream.
Welcome to Skypodcast.
Watch out for a new episode every Saturday. Now that we're in our 30s, mas mabilis lang talaga tayo mapagod.
Anyone out there na nasa 20s pa, enjoy mo yan.
It's just so different now. Everything's rushed. You gotta be this, you gotta be that. Yung pressure talaga to be something.
There are going to be a lot of these challenges.
I like to think about my 20s as a time of learning.
Namnamin mo yung sakit ngayon kasi when you're successful, hindi mo na yun madadala. Hello everyone!
Hello
and
everyone.
Welcome to the Sky Podcast.
How are you today, my love? How are you feeling?
I'm okay. May konting allergies. I have this, like, always allergy
Yeah.
na minamanage.
Yeah, I just realized every time I ask you how you are on the podcast, you have allergies.
Yeah? Maybe I'm allergic to the podcast.
Be allergic to me. No.
Yeah.
Ako naman, when people ask me, how are you?
Pregnant.
Lagi kong, actually, I'm very hesitant to answer. Kasi 80% of the time, yung sagot ko, I'm tired. But what do you say to a person who tells you, I'm tired, di ba? You're tired, okay, I won't talk na lang. Parang pinuputol mo na yung conversation agad, di ba? But I feel like it's not just the pregnancy that's making me tired. I feel like it's our age in general. Do you feel that way? Parang now that we're in our 30s, mas mabilis lang talaga tayo mapagod.
With everything.
With everything.
With everything. Like, for example, if I get an hour less of sleep,
Big deal na siya.
big deal na siya.
Oo, as compared to our 20s na
Kahit
2 hours
hungover.
lang, hangover, when you wake up, go, fight, energy lang. I was actually looking at my Instagram feed and a bunch of my friends are at concerts, festivals, and all of these things. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, that looks fun, but at the same time, I don't think kaya ko na.
Mayroon akong question. Do you think it's the age or do you think it's parenthood?
Both.
Kasi we have friends na are in their 30s, 40s, but they are still like partying.
We also have friends that are parents that still party, actually.
Oh yeah, actually, yes.
So maybe it's just us. No, but I was just having this conversation a few days ago with one of our close friends who always goes out. Like, she's always out with her boyfriend. And even when they got married, they were always out. And then suddenly when they had kids, ayaw na nila. And she was telling me, alam mo, I feel so bad for my husband because these days, I just want to stay home. And I look at him and he's like so bored wanting to go out. But as a mom, parang pagod na siya.
Yes.
And that was exactly me.
So, sige, pag-usapan natin yung lifestyle mo. Being in the 20s versus being in the 30s.
Yeah. Well, you know the difference, love. Kitang-kita mo yung difference, di ba? Ikaw mag-explain.
Si Chris dati would be able to operate in 3 hours of sleep and parang, I remember, like, it would be, well, I'm older. So, parang, when we were dating, like, si Chris parang, naiinggit ako sa energy niya. Itong maliit na babae.
Parang
yung
naka-extra
pocket rocket. Yeah, you'd always have that extra energy and you'll always be the one to sleep later and wake up earlier and you still have all this energy to complete everything you need to do for the rest of the day. Or even pag mag-vacation tayo, like, I'll just chill in the room all the time and you'd be like, labas na tayo, swimming na tayo.
Yeah,
All
I
this
remember that.
But ngayon, feeling ko, especially with motherhood and especially with pregnancy, bumabaliktad na siya. Like, si Chris would be the one to sleep earlier. Yeah.
So, ganito pala, guys. In your 20s, yung energy level nyo, 100. In your 30s, 50%. Tapos in your 40s, 100 siya ulit. Ganun ba, love?
I think the older you get, though, the earlier you sleep, but the earlier you wake up.
Oh my God, this is usapang pang matanda na talaga. Yes, I agree with you
Diba,
completely.
alam mo yung mga lolo, lola na 5 o'clock gising na sila eh. Diba? But sobrang agad din nila natutulog. But to be honest, kami ni Chris, especially me, like, parang inaalagaan ko na talaga yung katawan ko kasi nafe-feel mo every little thing. So I think if anyone out there na nasa 20s pa, enjoy mo yan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like in your 20s, your energy and your patience and your tolerance is a lot higher for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not just for like staying up late or like yung physical na napupuyat ka pero kaya mo siyang i-tolerate and you can go on with your day. Well, me, before when I was in my 20s, that was something that I was so concerned with. Like, if I don't go out this weekend, di FOMO ako. Like, I'm not part of the cool kids. Or like, I missed out. I don't know what's happening with my friends. Pero ngayon, parang, love, ikaw na. You go out, take one for the team. I'd rather rest here at home.
Parang, yung mga labas namin ngayon, like 12 o'clock would be...
A night out.
What would your advice be if you were to look back in your 20s? Ano pa ang parang sa'yo, tingin mo, na nakukulangan ka? I should have done this, I should have done that.
I think, looking back at my 20s, it was a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. I was actually just speaking to one of the agencies I work with, and the person that was handling me, she just, I think, graduated a few months ago, and she was asking me all of these questions, and she listens to this podcast, and she said, you know what, like, how do you have it all together? Because I just graduated, and I feel like I'm at the bottom of the food chain. Like, I see my classmates, everybody's traveling, or they're getting these great jobs, and here I am in this agency, and I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if I'm gonna get promoted soon. I don't know if, I should be traveling too. Like, TikTok is telling me to spend all my money traveling, but then my parents are telling me to, like, use all of your money and save it for a rainy day. Like, I'm so confused. I'm in a limbo, and I feel like this is something that a lot of girls or guys in their 20s can relate to. There's just a lot of uncertainty and pressure to be something, especially in the age of social media, right? I feel like I felt that too when I was in my 20s. Like, you don't really know what career path you want to go to. You don't really know yourself that well. Parang, san ba ako mag-shoot? All of these things, right? Like, my relationship, is it moving forward? All of these things. And I remember my advice to her was, hey, relax. Like, you just graduated. You spent your whole life studying and preparing for this moment. You literally just finished studying. Like, you're not expected to know what to do with your life already. And I told her, your example, love, na, Slater just recently found the job that he feels like he was called to do in all of his life, in his 30s even. Yeah. He was still trying to figure it out. Diba?
Yeah, I think the beauty of being in your 20s is that you're a lot more flexible. A lot, ang dami mong oras, number one. Ang dami mong patience when it comes to things. I feel like as the older you get, the more structured you are and the more maarte you are. Dapat ganito ako pag natutulog. Dapat ganito ako pag nagta-travel. I have to have all my conveniences. Like, for example, right now, when I travel, I have this, half of my suitcase is filled with things that I bring my own pillow. Parang kasi masakit na yung leg ko. May mga ganyan. But I feel like that flexibility and that malleability when you're younger is also very, very powerful when it comes to exploring what you really, really want to do in your life. If I were to look back on my 20s, kung saan nasasayang ko yung 20s ko is too much partying. I felt like I could have done with like half. And then, okay na. Wala talaga akong direction for the longest time. Although that was part of the process.
Okay. So, my advice was to cut this girl some slack. Like, cut yourself some slack. And your advice was, you cut yourself too much slack.
Yes. Depende talaga sa Depende talaga sa tao. Like, different medicine for different symptoms. Di ba? So, para sa akin, I was way too much into like...
YOLO life?
Yes, kasi parang late bloomer ako. So, nag-i-enjoy ako sa party life for a very, very long time. Oh, this is how you relate to people. Kasi that was kind of like my insecurity, I would say. Na parang, I want to be part of the cool kids. I want to be the part of the people that hang out. You know what? The older you get, the more you don't want to be part of the cool kids. You just have your own thing. And like, kilalang-kilala mo na yung sarili mo pag sinabing, those are the cool kids. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to, this is my thing.
Parang, okay, good.
You take pride in like being nerdy about things. You take pride in your hobbies. I was pushing myself to be what I really didn't want to do, or like parang in my head that was what fun and kind of like success felt should be.
But I feel like in your 20s, this is just me looking from the outside, because you were so deprived of partying and going out and all of these social situations growing up, parang namawi ka ba? Like,
yeah.
Right? Bumabawi ka in your 20s. And I don't think that was a waste of time, although you said it was a little bit too long, pwedeng half lang. Siguro, oo. Pero kasi feeling ko that really shaped who you are today, because you are very social, diplomatic, like, ang galing mo with people more than me. And I feel like partying had something to do with it. Kasi before, yung kwento mo sa akin, hindi ka marunong magsalita, shy ka. Pag may babae, hindi ka tahimik ka lang. All of these things, diba?
Yes. Partying and just being exposed to a lot more types of people. Kasi when you go out to a club, it's like, hindi ka sanay, it's parang socially awkward. And then it helped me develop a certain kind of confidence, a certain way of talking na parang, kaya ko to stand on my own 2 feet. So, I think that was very, very helpful. But tayo naman talaga, if we look back at our past, mayroon naman tayong makikita na pwede ganito, pwede ganyan. But it's like an ideal. But alam natin, life is never lived by just ideals. Ang daming mess, ang daming mga inefficiencies that we go through in life whenever we're moving forward. And that's just part of the journey. So, for example, the person you were giving an advice to, like parang as long as you're moving forward, my litmus test would always be if I'm better than the person that I was before, I'll be okay. Yeah.
I guess I was just trying to kind of like appease her because I feel like there's so much pressure going around now in your 20s. I've spoken to so many girls in their 20s now na parang yung pressure talaga to be something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like being normal or being average is no longer status quo. You have to be above and beyond all the time now. And it's so hard to take your time now. You know what I mean? Like everything's rushed. Everything's like, you gotta be the youngest CEO. You gotta be this, you gotta be that.
Feeling ko the pressure these days is not like of being 20 this
No.
2024 versus when being 20 like when we were 20. Parang it seems such a long time ago, but that was just like 15 years ago. Iba yung merong
For me,
15, 20 years ago. But iba kasi yung may mga social media na nagdi-dictate na ngayon kung ano dapat. Like just looking at kids in their 20s right now, like yung mga nephew natin, mga nieces, iba yung hilig nila, iba din yung pressure nila versus when we were at that age na parang hindi tayo as worldly, I would say.
I would say that. I mean, now with the age of social media, right? We always talk about how it makes you pressured and all of these things, but also like it makes you absorb so much knowledge, even if it's something simple like in the brands that we wear, right? When we were growing up in high school, isa lang yung uso, isang backpack lang. Pag naka-Jansport ka, okay ka na. Pero ngayon,
or pag may Lacoste ka na
or
parang
Tommy Hilfiger, or mga ganun, like kung ano yung brand na nasa mall, at ano yung
Yun na
sinusuot ng mga classmate mo, yun na yun. Isa lang yun. Isa lang yung goal.
pag may pasalubong ka from America, parang wow, America. Ngayon,
Yeah.
Amazon is so accessible.
Yeah, and there were so many things that I didn't know back then that are now just common knowledge to the kids at that age. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So parang ngayon, when I was in college, I never even thought about anything branded. It was just like a canvas bag. It's just a school bag.
Yes.
Pero ngayon, they're telling me that in school, girls are actually starting to wear branded things and like it's part of the ecosystem in their school na. Like if you have this, then you're like this or whatever. And that just to me is a whole world, like different world and so much
Yes.
pressure. Ang
Yes.
hirap maging bata ngayon.
Yes, and nakikita ko even with like mga nieces and nephews na naka-Rolex na, 25 years old. My dad had one when he was like 40s na. Parang it was a big deal. Na parang, uy, may Rolex na si daddy. So you're thinking is like, pag 40s na ako, maybe I'll get one. It wasn't a thing for you to be wearing these types of watches. Yeah.
It's just so different now.
Yes,
I feel.
yes.
Mas pressure talaga sila.
Yes. Aside from that, yung mga nakikita mo sa TikTok na, batang-bata pa, meron na siyang negosyo, earning this much. Like, even when I see things on social media na parang, this girl is earning like 13 million a day. Like, parang, ha? Totoo ba talaga to? Meron bang ganyan?
I'm not doing enough with my life.
Like, parang, then you feel all these like pressure of insecurity na, ay, kulang pa pala yung ginagawa ko. Para ang dami ko nang ginagawa eh. I'd like to think that I'm a little bit older enough to like, put a filter on it. But imagine being young and impressionable and seeing that. And I think that's where all these like anxiety comes from and feeling na may kulang ka, may pagkukulang ka.
I mean, I'm also a little bit older than, we're talking about the generation of their 20s now. I'm 34. And I know that these things are happening, especially because I work in that field, right? I'm very aware, which is why I'm so conscious now about like the type of content that I post also, that it's not like a kind of showing off or whatever. Like I'm very, very conscious of that now. But even me, sometimes I feel that when I know I'm not supposed to feel that way, right? I already know that what I'm looking at is a highlight reel or a sponsored post, right? Like, okay, my friend is here because sponsored yung trip. But you can't help but feel bad about yourself when everything that you're seeing is good. And you're just at home in the dark on your phone.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
And you're comparing yourself, like, for example, on social media, you're comparing yourself to, like, other successful people or people so much more successful than you. But ang dami niyang views. Ay, but ang creative niya. Ako hindi. Tayo, we have, like, a 15, 20-year lead on that maturity. Versus, like, for example, kung ako yun, when I was 20, ang dami kong mga iniidolo, ang dami kong mga fad na gine-join, yung mga trends na gine-join. And, like, you keep on comparing yourself kasi wala ka pang benchmark on who you want to be, who you really are. Again, like parang if I were to give advice to my younger self, it would be to just take it one day at a time. Try to find what you're passionate about and do that. And kailangan alam mong, eto ako. That's what you're trying to explore, I would say.
But that's so hard to know.
This is my advice to a younger Slater. Just try to see what you're really good at and stick to that and be able to say no to a lot of things. Because especially if the younger, like say, for example, Scotty, try to find what you really want to do in life and be able to say, hey, this thing that I see on social media, this isn't me. Kasi we get pulled in a lot of directions. I want the sports car, but I also want to have free time. I also want to do vacations like this person that I see. I also want to have a successful business because of this person. And I also want to look good. And I also want to do this. And I also want to be an engineer, architect, whatever. So parang your ideals are like pulled everywhere. Instead of me right now, alam kong, okay, cool that he is that, but that isn't me. Meron kang parang automatic boundary na, hindi ko naman hilig yun. So, you don't get tempted to be all of the things to everyone. Trying to discover who you really are and what you want and what is important to you. And knowing that that's you and you can't compare yourself to any other person.
And it's okay na iba
And
yung
it's
gusto
okay.
mo.
Yes. So when I nerd out on, to some would be like stupid things, like okay lang ako. And when si Chris makes fun of me for like traveling and knocking on walls and stuff, okay lang ako kasi alam ko, yun talaga hilig ko. Bahala na kayo dyan.
Yeah. I mean, easier said than done, right?
Yes.
Easier
It takes
said
time.
than done. It takes time. And I think that's the beauty of being older and being in your 30s because you've had that time, right? You've had 10 years.
Yeah.
To kind of discover who you are. And when I look back at my 20s, oh my gosh, there are so many things that I did that I regret, that are cringe, that are, oh my gosh, if I just went back in time, I could fix that, I could handle that situation better. So many things. But, you know, that's the beauty of life, that you go through all of these things, all of these embarrassing things, these cringy things, and these good things also. And it makes you who you are, and it makes you discover who you want to be. And in your 30s, I feel like, you know that saying that life begins in your 30s?
Yes.
I truly believe it. I mean, my 20s were so fun. I did so many things that I never thought I would be able to do. And in my 30s, opposite. Parang the moment I turned 30, I got married, I got pregnant, I stayed at home, it was pandemic. I stopped doing all of these things. But I truly feel that life begins at 30 kasi I'm more settled and I know myself more.
Yeah.
And I'm more contented in life. Na parang, sige, okay lang. You guys do your thing. I'm really happy seeing you do it, but I'm also happy being where I am now.
Yes.
And I feel like this is something that a lot of older, wiser people understand. You know how like when you're young and you have all of these stresses, and then your parents always say, okay lang yan anak, kalimutan mo na yan. It's always the older people who just brush these things off. And I feel like it's because they're coming from a place na settled na sila. They don't put themselves in your feet, shoes. They don't put themselves in your shoes. It comes with age, is what I'm trying to say. That when you're older, the more settled you become and confident and contented you become with who you are.
Yes. What I feel when we were younger is like every problem seems like the end of the world. I think the younger we are, the smaller the problem, the bigger it seems. And once you've gone through a lot of these shit, parang makikita mo na, it wasn't such a big deal pala. You get broken up with, feeling mo, wala na talaga. It's like the end of the world. I saw a video, and sinabi niya, imagine that thing happens to you all the time already. And then you kind of like grow into it and you know the system, you know the process of it already, and paulit-ulit, it happens to you 1,000 times, this thing that you are having a problem with.
So if it's a breakup, 1,000 times ka na heartbroken.
Okay, 1,000 times. So parang at the end of the day, you get resilient to it.
Yeah.
And you get like, okay, this is just part of the process. And this has happened to me. Like I've had a lot of breakups, a lot of heartaches. And after a while, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to feel sad. I know that I'm going to feel sad, but I know eventually I'm going to recover and be okay. So I see it like, for example, Scotty loses his toy. It's such a big issue. Like, and then you get to your teens and then you discover, hey, that's not such a big deal. And then iba na naman yung pinaproblema mo. And then when you're in your 20s, maybe you're thinking about your career. And then you kind of realize, hey, all these things, the things that I was so worried about yesterday are kind of like okay.
Yeah.
Ano yung quote?
Today is the
Today
day
is, yeah, I keep on saying this in this podcast, like today is the day.
that I was so worried about.
Today is the tomorrow that you were so worried about yesterday. And that quote, I've had that quote in my head for like 20 years already because that has always been true in every single sense.
I want to talk to you about stress resilience because I feel like you are the best person to talk about this, and I always brag about this to my friends and to my family. Like, Slater's stress resilience is just through the roof because I hear maybe 50% or 40% of the problems that he has in a day, every day. I hear it. Pero alam kong konti lang yun kasi he leaves the house and he goes to work, and when he has meetings, it's more problems and more stress that I don't hear. So I know madami talaga. And when he tells me about these problems, ako yun nasi-stress. Na parang, what? How do you deal with that? Di ko na alam. Like, pero he's just brushing his teeth and thinking about how to solve it, and then he leaves for work. And then end of the day, he's at home and it's fine. And I just like tell him all the time, like, I don't know how you do it, but I can't. Like, even just hearing the problem stresses me out already.
I do get stressed, don't get me wrong. There are still issues that need a lot of attention, but I feel like meron na akong methodology about like dealing with these things. As long as I can find a solution, I don't think about it anymore. What stresses me out is the unresolved. Like, there's a problem that I cannot find a solution to. Or like, hindi ko makikita yung path forward. Meron akong light block, and there's 2 real estate companies as well as all these things that we do on social media. So there are a lot of things like coming at me. And usually when you're the one leading the group, the hard problems get passed on to you. The not so hard problems, parang sinasolve na yun on the local level. Sa akin, ang darating is yung mga problema na medyo mahirap i-solve. What stresses me out are the uncontrolled and the walang direction. But ang palagi ko ginagawa is, for example, if I find a solution, I stop thinking about it. I just put it in my phone. To-do list. Ito yung gagawin ko with this particular problem. And then I stop thinking about it na. And I feel like it's because of all the past stresses. All the things that I blown up when I was younger. All these things na kinikwento natin na when we were younger, this small thing, parang ang laki-laki na. What I realized from looking at entrepreneurs and business people that deal with a lot bigger stresses is that they're a lot more mature naman in that sense. Na parang the big problems that I think are big are for them, hey, we deal with that on a daily basis, hindi yun problema, just do this, 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 and it's okay. You don't have to think about it, and losing sleep over it doesn't make it
better.
Hindi siya nawawala just because you're losing sleep. As long as you have those methodologies in place, yeah, you're allowed to dwell for a certain amount of time, but you have to get back up right away because there's another one and another one and another one coming. I feel like just expecting that this is part of it and part of the journey, whether you're in your 20s or your 30s or 40s, helps with the stress and the anxiety that comes along with it. Like, pag alam mong this is going to be stressful, you're facing that head on because you know that it's coming. So, for example, we're doing a lot of growth when it comes to light panel. I just had this meeting yesterday. Sabi ko na sa leadership team namin na expect a lot of stress. Expect that there will be things that get broken. Expect that our systems wouldn't be the same systems that we're going to be using. But just because they know that it's coming, and I told them that, hey, this is going to come, whether we like it or not, it's not going to be smooth. Alam na nila and they're ready for it versus you plan for the best and you think that your plan is gonna work. It's never gonna work out the way you planned it. It's not just business advice. It's more of life advice. Especially when you're in your 20s where there's a lot of transitions and there are a lot of changes. Hindi mo pa alam kung saan ka papunta sa buhay. Are going to be a lot of these challenges.
Ako, what I learned from you, love, in my 20s, I was very emotional and reactive. And And then when we started dating, and I was in my late 20s or mid 20s by this time, ikaw sobrang opposite, diba? You're very relaxed, you're very zen, you're very calm, and your whole family is. And when I met you and I hung out with you and I saw how you reacted to things differently from me, parang naput into place yung emotions ko. And I feel like it's similar to stress. Like sometimes when you're in a stressful situation and the people around you are reacting so much, it kind of causes you to react even more, right? But sometimes if you just pluck yourself out of that situation or even have company of people that are encouraging you or helping you and reacting in a better way, like you were, parang it helps you shed more light into the situation and not really blow it up to an extreme. You know what I mean? So it's not just, for me, it's not just about business, but all of these small things in life that in my 20s, I was so reactive to, I was so expressive about. And now looking back, parang cringe na siya. Like, why was it such a big deal for me? There are so many better ways that you can handle situations that I learned now in my 30s because of you.
Well, sa akin naman, when I was younger, I had a bad temper. Even when I was like working na and leading people, meron akong temper na parang when things doesn't get done right, nagagalit ako agad.
Yeah.
And I always ended up regretting it.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could have handled it better. So I'd process it. Sometimes it still gets the better of me. Or sometimes, very, very rarely, pero meron pa rin. Human naman din tayo. Pero I think it was just knowing that every time I got angry, I did things that were, number one, not logical. Kasi parang na-override yung sense mo, yung common sense mo, because you're like in a heightened emotional state. So I always regretted the things that I've said, the things that I've done, and the things and how it made the other person feel. Like, for example, in a work setting, pag nagagalit ako, or even in a relationship setting, pag nagagalit tayo towards each other, instead of us knowing that we want the same thing, it's like the relationship to work, nagiging pride issue siya, or nagiging issue siya without an end. It's more of like, I want to win this argument.
Yeah, who's to blame? Who's right, who's wrong?
Yes. So, in the same sense, when I'm talking to one of my employees, naiisip ko na my job is not to reprimand. My job is to get good performance out of them. And getting angry doesn't get good performance. It demotivates them. Instead of, hey, this is something wrong. You're firm. You're still very much a leader and very much holding them to a higher standard. But hindi siya emotional. It's more of a calculated thing na we both want the same thing, is for you to be productive, for you to succeed, because you succeeding helps me succeed. It puts that into perspective.
Yeah. I like to think about my 20s and those cringe moments in the past as a time of learning. Now that we're in our 30s, feeling ko parang na, okay, nag-graduate na ako. Or I'm still learning, obviously, but parang at least, I had those years, those 10 years to learn more about life. When you're young, you go to school, you're learning about mathematics and science and all of these things. And when you're in your 20s to your 30s, you're learning about the real world.
Yeah.
And how to apply everything that you learn in school in the real world. So expected that you make mistakes.
Yeah.
Expected that it's cringe. Expected that it's pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why I say life begins at 30 kasi feeling ko, okay, nag-graduate na ako. I'm still learning every single day, but at least I get it now. I get the pace now. I get where I belong now. Parang ganun yung feeling ko.
Yes. I think in our 20s, we experience a lot of pain. We experience a lot of anxiety. We experience a lot of problems, especially throughout the whole, hindi pa ako sigurado kung nasan ako. We stumble a lot. We don't have the skill set also yet to be where we want to be. So we experience a lot of these heartaches and pain. And what I've realized is even those breakups, those failed businesses, those failed career paths, nakakarga ko. And it actually makes me stronger and it makes me more resilient because those things that I've gone through, and I've used this all throughout my life, hey, kinaya ko nga yun eh. This is nothing compared to what I experienced to that. I can even translate it na, okay, I've had this big heartache where I was cheated on, blah, 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 and like, ang sakit. Iba yung emotional, like, it took me months to recover, to be back to normal. Pero, nakakarga ko sa trabaho. Like parang compared to that experience, itong dinadaanan ko ngayon, it's not that painful compared to that. I think the pain helps us become more resilient, especially when the challenges that we've faced, parang it molds us to have a point of comparison kung ano yung totoong masakit versus, ito maliit lang tong bagay na to. Yeah. There was this one motivational speaker I listened to, sabi niya, namnamin mo yung sakit ngayon. Kasi when you're successful, hindi mo na yun madadala. And you always look back to that as your defining moment. If you listen to mga Jeff Bezos, mga Elon Musk, they always go back to those most painful moments and say, that is like the turning point.
Yeah. You know, that's true even in, let's say, pregnancy and childbirth, right? I have a very low pain tolerance and I was always scared to give birth.
Yes.
And I remember when I gave birth to Scotty, it was so painful. Like I told myself, I'm gonna be poised, it's all in the mind, I'm gonna do my breathing exercises, my affirmations, we got the private room, we're good. And then when we got to the hospital, it was like, what the hell? Parang, even if my brain was telling me that the pain will pass, it's just like my body was just convulsing on its own, right?
Yeah.
So it got to a point where it was so painful na hindi ko na talaga kaya that they had to like stick me with an epidural, and Slater was watching and he was saying, how can she not be reacting? This is a pretty damn big needle. But all I felt was relief. Like, wala akong na-feel na pain. Kasi yung na-taste ko na pain was so intense that all of these small painful things thereafter, kaya ko na siya.
Yeah.
And now, every time that I have like these small challenges in my life, it's funny because that was my pain point na parang turning point in life na, dude, if I can give birth to a child turning 3, like, I can do anything. Like,
Yes.
women are amazing. You know, like, at the childbirth, as we all know, is crazy. Like, it's like your body is getting hit by a bus. And then to come out after that and be an even better woman or learning how to take care of your kids and, you know, growing and all of these things, it's just insane. So now, whenever I have these stressful situations, that's true. I always look back at these moments in my life where I was able to overcome an obstacle that was so great that I thought that I couldn't overcome. And then that's what fuels me and gives me fire to, you know, move forward.
Yeah. Kasi it's good that even so, in that example, hindi kasi you experience pain in childbirth, you're more resilient with the next childbirth. You can use that with other aspects in your life. Na parang kinaya ko nga to, I can apply it to other things in my life. It's funny how you were saying na planned all these things and like, okay, you have a picture in your head of how what it is going through, and then when the situation arose, you can't plan for everything. Sa quote ni Mike Tyson is, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
So I think that's just life in general. Na life is what happens. Ano yun?
Life is what happens when you're too busy
making other plans.
Making plans.
Yes. So parang ang dami natin mga plano, especially when you're younger. Oh, I want to be this. Meron pa nga akong journal dati na by the time I'm 30, dapat meron na akong ganito na achieve, meron na akong ganitong kotse. Very idealistic. May
I mean, it's
sports
good to
car
have
pa, may mga
goals.
ganyan. Oh, like parang it was so idealistic. I didn't know how I was gonna get there. Kasi thinking nga, the secret, pag sinulat ko lang to, okay na to. Parang, but ang dami pa nating mga kailangan i-realize about the world na yung plans natin often don't go the way we want it to go.
Yeah, so I would say like in your 20s, cut yourself some slack. You are learning to go through life.
Yes.
And in your 30s, you can enjoy life.
Para sa akin, the best thing you have going for you when you're 20s is you have a lot more options. And you have infinitely a lot more time.
And energy.
So, ang dami mong pwedeng subukan. Think of it like an exploratory state.
Exactly.
Some of us are very, very lucky na sa 20s pa tayo. Alam na natin who we want to be, what career path we want to take. For 99% of us, parang it would be more of a perfect situation to treat it like an exploratory stage, to try as many things as you can, especially ngayon, you can try a lot more things with the online presence. There's more opportunities online.
You can travel more now.
Yes, the world is a lot more open. So explore until you kind of like find what you really feel like you want to do in life. This is coming from a career perspective. I was in construction. Feeling ko gusto ko magiging artista. So, nag-PBB na ganyan. Bumalik lang din sa construction. But I was able to find my niche and my talents within that, I would say. And like parang that was a whole like 360. Na bumalik lang din ako sa parang what I thought I didn't want to do. But I think I had to go through all of that to know what it is that was truly meant for me. Yeah.
And it didn't take you just your 20s, right? You discovered this in your 30s. In fact,
Yeah.
together na tayo.
Yes.
We were married
Yeah.
na. So parang don't give yourself a timeline. I mean, it's good to have a timeline and to have goals and all these things, but there's no shame in your timeline being different from everybody else's.
Yes. Explore lang and explore and like enjoy those moments because when you're 30s, wala na rin kayong energy.
Dami na kayong responsibility. Wala nang
Yeah,
time to
dami.
explore. Pag mag-explore kayo, tatawagin kayo ng asawa nyo.
Yeah, namnamin mo yan. Kasi kahit kami, like, I would give up a lot of things to have that same energy and same, like, happy-go-luckiness.
Talaga, you would give up a lot. Ano yung give up mo?
Kung pwedeng, fountain of youth. Hindi naman ikaw, love.